Hi, and welcome to the Handsell with Ron Hogan and my guest today, Emily Pullen of Word Bookstore in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Now, Emily, before you came to Brooklyn, you used to work at a bookstore in Los Angeles, and I'm curious as to what you've noticed in the differences of the literary communities between the two areas since you moved east.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is a misconception that there isn't a huge literary community in Los Angeles, which is patently not true. But in terms of the way that people read and the way that people shop, I think that in New York I've noticed that people are much more in tune to the brand new things that are just coming out, and so I feel more pressure as a bookseller to make sure that I am up on those brand new things. And in Los Angeles and here, people read a lot of literary fiction. You know, that's something that's definitely very common, a common thread among all of the readers. But I don't know, I wonder whether perhaps the fact that a lot of publishing professionals are existing in New York may have something to do with the fact that people are so aware of what's coming out right now.
Well, we will see how that emphasis on the new affects the picks that you come up with today. Now, the way that the Handsell works is that people send me lists of books that they've enjoyed reading, and then my guest stars and I try to come up with recommendations for books they might enjoy next. And I have a list here today from Jennie from Virginia, and 3 books that she enjoys are Wicked by Gregory Maguire, Ghost Map by Stephen Johnson, which is a bit of nonfiction, and the graphic novel Fables, Cubs in Toyland by Bill Willingham and Mark Buckingham. It's kind of an interesting mix of titles, and I'm really interested to see what you came up with in terms of what fits those.
Sure. Yeah, well, I tended to sort of latch on to the fact that 2 out of the 3 are retellings of familiar tales. Fables, graphic novels, or take characters from fairy tales and then, you know, put them into another world in another context where they're all interacting together. And Wicked by Maguire is also a retelling of The Wizard of Oz. So that was sort of what I latched on to for several of my recommendations. And another thing that you'll notice in terms of booksellers is that we often rely on recommendations from people who we trust, since we can't possibly read everything.
Absolutely.
So I've got a couple that I haven't read, but that I trust the recommendation.
Okay.
The first is Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber. My coworker Molly says, for anybody who likes retellings of fairy tales, this is the end-all be-all. So that is the one that my coworker Molly recommends, and I trust her taste pretty implicitly. Another recommendation along that same vein is anything that's edited by Kate Bernheimer. She's really a really respected force in the world of fairy tales and retellings and everything. And this is a collection of short stories by all fantabulous fiction writers. You've got Amy Bender in there, you've got Kevin Brockheimer, Kelly Link, Joyce Carol Oates, Francine Pruz, you know, a lot of really great writers, all retelling fairy tales that you're familiar with.
And that one's called My Mother, She Killed Me, My Father, He Ate Me.
Also a contender for one of the best titles ever.
Oh, and you've got Sailor Twain there, I think.
Yes,
yeah, yes.
I do have Sailor Twain. Let's jump into a graphic novel. Sailor Twain is by Mark Siegel, and the subtitle is The Mermaid in the Hudson. So it takes sort of fantastical elements and tells a story set in about the time of Mark Twain. So you know, definitely a historical tale, but also a bit timeless. Really stunning illustrations that you can kind of
see some
flip
of these?
through, maybe not. So this would be my recommendation for comics. And then I've just got 3 more quick ones. This is another one that's a recommendation from a coworker, my coworker Jen. This was one of her favorite nonfiction books from last year called Spillover, and it's all about infectious disease, which she says seems like it would be a hard sell and wouldn't be fun to read about, but it's incredibly riveting. So this is sort of going with that infectious part. Mm-hmm. Then we've got The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's been a bestseller for several years, and this is just really compelling sort of medical mystery. Takes a history of one specific person whose cells were made into the HeLa, H-E-L-A, biological cultures, and this, you know, it sort of became the foundation of modern biology. And the writer of this also sort of does her research and finds out that the family you know, that becomes sort of another part of the story, is learning how the family has coped with and been treated by the medical establishment that their mother really sort of helped establish. So it's got these great narrative threads weaved in. And then finally, because we are also more than willing to recommend things that we haven't read, this is one that I've been dying to read that seems really, really fascinating, which sort of brings it all together. We've got sort of the story of Mary Shelley's masterpiece about Frankenstein, so that's in a way almost a fairy tale at this point in terms of our familiarity with it, but also looking at the doctors and the dissections and sort of the medicine that goes in with it. So kind of brings together all of those aspects, the literary and the medical, into solid nonfiction.
Fantastic, and that's The Lady and Her Monsters by
Roseanne Montillo.
So that's 6 great recommendations right off the bat, and I've got one title, but I think it's a title that Jennie will really like. It's a novel that just came out and which I reviewed for the Dallas Morning News recently, called The Golem and the Genie by a debut novelist named Helene Wecker. And basically it's a story set in Manhattan on the Lower East Side at the turn of the 20th century, and a lot of it is set in Manhattan's Jewish community there, but some of it is set a little bit further down in what was then known as Little Syria, which was part of the big Middle Eastern immigrant community of early 20th century Manhattan. And the story really is pretty much there in the title. There is a golem and there is a genie. And this golem is a little unusual in that rather than just being formed as this kind of like androgynous humanoid figure, this is pretty much a sort of almost a living, breathing woman in appearance. And she is created to be a wife for a character who then dies early in the story. So she's kind of lost on her own, adrift in early 20th century Manhattan. And as she's making her way, it also turns out that, as I say, a few neighborhoods over, there is a 1,000-year-old genie who has been released from a bottle into Manhattan, and he's trying to cope with his situation. And eventually the two of them meet, and the story goes on from there in some really interesting directions. And I think that Jennie will really like that story if she's into the kinds of folkloric and fairy tale aspects that we know that she is into from the stories that she's told us she likes. So right there are 7 books. That ought to keep Jennie busy for a while, and hopefully it'll keep many of you busy for a while as well. Now, if you would like me to make some recommendations for you personally, what you do is you go to the handsell.com/ask, and you tell me 3 to 5 books that you've enjoyed recently, and then hit send. And then I will try to find a guest star, whether it's an author or an independent bookseller like Emily, and together we'll look at that list and see what we can come up with for you. In the meantime, today from Word in Brooklyn, I'm Ron Hogan, this is Emily Pullen, and thank you for watching.